GM, GA, GE, wherever you may be. Markets are down. We're still here to talk about NFTs, what's upcoming, different projects that are trying to release this week. Is it a good idea? Is there anything good to look forward to? So we'll be chatting about that today. Welcome, Tyler. So it's been somewhat of an eventful weekend in crypto NFTs, not necessarily in a good way, but I think there's a lot of people on Twitter that there's plenty of shit posting out there and negative memes heading to zero, this, that. We've seen some stuff with like Celsius that there's been just crypto overall in coins have been down, and that's also moving towards NFTs. So how has your weekend been?
My weekend was fine. So I've decoupled. I'll use the decoupling term. Personal life from the markets. So it's summertime in Chicago. The weather's been fantastic. So I had a nice weekend with the family. Tried not to spend too much time in the Twitter sphere and just reading the same "the sky is falling" posts. Every 15 to 20 minutes with a new chart and a new headline from the next protocol that's now in trouble or depegged. So weekend was good, but man, it was a rough morning kind of logging in today and checking the crypto markets and then the NFT markets because they're both going down.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's weird. Some of the victory laps are just so weird for people. Like I've seen people victory lapping Goblin Town being down to 3 ETH, and it's almost like, well, you weren't really saying anything anyone else was about them that they were overpriced. Like I think it's more of a concern where you could look at that same person who's probably saying like Azuki or Clone X, we're going to flip apes. And they're not talking about that bad take that they made. So it's kind of weird. People are really picking and choosing on Twitter. So I agree with you. Like I'm trying not to look too much on Twitter and take what people are saying because they probably said the opposite thing 2 months ago. So that's for me. Like I had a post yesterday where it's like the people who say that they're holding to zero are starting to get exposed. And I truly believe that. There's a lot of people that had made that as a joke and then, because you just think it's funny to say. But now that Ethereum is around $1,200 when it was $2,000, then they're starting to think, oh, do I have to jump ship now? So the people that are sticking around, that's the other side of it. A lot of these tweets are saying like people that are sticking around are the ones that you should be looking towards. So, I mean, for us, we're planning on sticking around here with Lucky Trader and doing these shows. I think it's important to do shows in down markets because that's where people really learn for the next time what these things trend down to. It's something that we talked about in the spaces last week was how do you know that a bear market is imminent? Like what are the signs moving towards it? Obviously there's macro stuff as well, but let's look at some of these projects on the project ranking page here at Lucky Trader. So what sort of stuff is sticking out to you? Because I think some of these volume numbers are still decent, but a lot of the floors are down. So what's sort of been sticking out to you?
Yeah, a few takeaways, and it's also a noticeably different theme when you look at the 7-day board versus the 1-day. But we'll start with the 7-day. I think one takeaway is that it still reflects that last week we were still heavily in the free mint meta era, and half of these projects on the leaderboard are those from that sector. So we've got the We're All Going to Die second on the board with 7,000 ETH traded, even though it's down 66% and likely starting its death spiral to zero. You mentioned Goblin Town. They've been steady up there, even though their volume is down 78% at 5,500. The floor holding at 3.3, I'd say is probably a win for that community. Yeah. I'd say they're probably happy with the floor holding there.
And I think I saw a tweet, it might have been from D's, where they were the only green floor on the past day, or it might have been through the weekend, but they were the only in what he had it filtered by.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even you can see it in there, like them. Shit Beast is on there as well, but yeah, it's
For
kind of
the
interesting.
it is. I don't know that I'm reading a ton into that. So we're looking at the daily board. I think there's a bit to unpack here. So the volumes are all hugely green. So we are seeing a flight in the liquidity that is in the NFT market to the top end collections.
Mhm.
That being said, it's not the type of volume that you want. It's a lot of people racing for the exits, and that is absolutely what we saw overnight into this morning. It was kind of a stampede at
Yeah.
some point. I don't know. The BAYC was in the mid 90s. It started trickling down the low end of the week to around the 90 range. It hit 70 this morning at bottom. Now it's back to like 77. I think that's been the recurring theme for these lower end for the next tier as well. Was a big drop this morning following like the ETH crash and the equity markets, but about a 10% rebound. So, it's likely just a relief rally. I certainly am not calling bottom here. I think we've got more pain to come, just because of likely what's to come in the equity markets.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it's not just straight down, and there is some liquidity still. And it does seem that the liquidity is going to be focused in the top end collections.
Yeah, I think a couple things that jumped out to me there was Moonbirds dipped, I think, to like 14, but then got bought up a little bit. There still not that many listings of Moonbirds, so it's only showing around 100 of them even listed on OpenSea. So that one has been a positive. It seems like they have separated themselves. Maybe they're kind of their own tier, but they have seemed to separate themselves from Clonex Doodles and Azuki, which are all around that 8 ETH floor. So that was somewhat interesting to me, where they are all kind of moving together, as what I believe now they're probably their own tier, of them three. So Goblin Town, I think, is still trying to figure out what tier it's in, if it's going to be here long term. I think there are a decent amount of people that plan to hold it, and I've seen people say at 3 ETH it was a good buy-in. Not too surprised about Other Deed falling either, but the big thing with Bored Apes, which another kind of what you're saying before, I saw a stream of on my Twitter feed where it was like, it's the same tweet, and we've seen this before. It was the same tweet. It's just 6 hours later, they move the goalposts, and it's like a different person that did it. So there, it was saying, Bored Apes were $440,000 6 weeks ago. Now they're $160,000. Then the next one I saw 135,000. Then the next one I saw is they're at 100,000 now, and then they got under. So how much do you think the USD value is affecting for people? Because to me, I think some are looking at this and, my bags are down 30% in ETH terms, but then also down 50% because ETH, the price of it, is also down. So this is something that has been touted as it should work opposite, where ETH values of these go up while the USD value goes down. So what's sort of your thoughts on that side of things?
Yeah, it's a great point and discussion topic. And to me, I feel like most at this point, crypto and NFT native traders price in ETH. ETH is the currency, and don't spend that much time reflecting on the US dollar value. I think there's a few situations where you're reflecting on US dollar. One is when you're just looking at what your portfolio value is, and just don't check it. It's not going to be a good number for you right now. And then if you're looking to enter or exit entirely and like move to stables. So for those who have USDC on the sidelines, they're absolutely pricing in USD, and they're probably starting to see some more attractive entry points. But for those who are just, they've made the commitment to crypto, they've got their crypto bags ready. Everything that matters is the ETH price. And I think that's part of the silver lining with the Bored Ape floor is like, yes, it's down 80% in USD terms, but only 50% in ETH terms, and still holding 77 and we've seen the 50% drawdowns. And real quick, along these lines, I was taking a look at this Nansen chart this morning that shows the weekly volumes, but in ETH terms instead of US dollar terms. So we typically look at that noon analytics dashboard with the USD volume, and certainly we're like at the lowest levels in daily transactions in US dollar terms. But in ETH terms, it's a different story. So if you look at the last 4 weeks, we are right around 150,000 ETH traded per week. It's above last November when we kind of hit that last big bear. And I'd say right in line with December, which was kind of where the market was trading right before we saw the January kind of boom or relief bull cycle, whatever you want to call it. So I thought that was really interesting way of looking at it, just because I've been so focused on the US dollar daily transactions, looking at it, hey, the market's actually trading in line with how it has in the past in bear cycles, but the value of ETH is down, and that's why the US dollars are down. So I think this is a bigger concern. If the ETH weekly candles start dropping a lot lower, I think will be a bigger deal.
Yeah, that's interesting because I would have not thought that was the case. I thought they were both going down, and that was obviously more anecdotally, just because a lot of these floors have been trending downward. Not too many floors have been going up, really. As we mentioned, it was just Goblin Town. In that sense, there have been some, I don't know if you want to call them funny tweets, but those like flip bots where in for 2 ETH, out for 8 ETH, loss of $1,000. There have been some tweets like that, which you look at it and it's like, well, you gained 6 ETH, which that might be good long term or something. But if you do believe in ETH to go back up long term and you're just holding it and you're not trying to sell it right into USD, could be a good time to book some tax losses in that sense, the tax loss harvesting stuff. So then there was this one from Toads where they bought it for 300 WETH. This was a one of one and just sold it for 6.9 WETH. After 8 months, a total loss of around $1 million. So very interesting take here. I wonder if they bought a different one and like full tax loss harvested, or if this one will get rebought or something. And they just were trying to take the 1 million loss. But what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, and this one, I kind of hate to pull this up, but maybe there's more behind the scenes to this. Maybe it's an internal trade of some kind, but this might be the single worst trade I've ever seen with that posting the $1 million loss. So hopefully the owner has some big gains that they're using this to write off. But I mean, my advice here is like, why not just hold, right? Like it can't be worth much less than that, at least in percentage terms. I mean, you're already down 99.9%. Like there's probably a higher percent chance that it goes back up than just locking in that big of a loss on a one of one and what is still a somewhat iconic set. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of these, and some of them are a little tough.
Yeah, it's we're going to see a lot more of these, I think, in the coming weeks. It's just one of those things where people are going to take the opportunity, I think, to do this sort of tax loss harvesting. I've done it with some stuff, not this aggressively, but where if I'm not expecting it to go up anytime soon, I do the sort of switcheroo where you sell one at a loss and then rebuy it at the lower price. Because if it doesn't go up again and you're just holding it, it might be that much harder in 6 months to sell it if it doesn't go up. If that makes sense.
It does, and absolutely not sell shaming anyone here. Like, of course, like if you think the market's going to keep going lower and you think Xing right now, even at a big loss, is the right move, like then that's the right move for you. So definitely not making fun of the strategy at all. Yeah. Just this was a tough one on the timeline here today.
Yeah. One thing that we hadn't talked about last week, or was there another one that you wanted to talk about on the trends?
No, I was just getting off the tweet.
One thing that came up last week after our stream was MFers.
Mhm.
So basically, Satoshi went in into this end of Satoshi collection and dipped, just completely left, sent it off to the community to deal with. Um, Price of MFers dropped. End of Satoshi brought in a couple $1 million. What's your thoughts on what happened here with the MFers?
Yeah, this is a tricky situation to unpack. Definitely the biggest headlines of last week before we kind of just got into all the doom headlines and recession headlines. So Satoshi surprise announcement on June 9th. He's leaving, um, turning over everything into the community in true Web3 fashion, as some have been describing it. And a lot of people were applauding him on the way out, even
Mhm.
though he turned over 50% of the royalties to the community. He's still keeping 25% in perpetuity. And then where it got a little cash grabby, he did a final open edition, which I forget the final tally offhand, but it was 0.069 ETH to mint. It minted quite a few, like 10,000 or something, right? And I
Yeah, it
think
was
it was
over 10. Yeah.
like a $2 million raise on the way out, all while the MFers floor is crashing 50%. And the counter to that is it was 1.25 ETH before the roadmap announcement, so it basically just kind of fell back to where it was. I think this is a true test of, you know, do these CCO projects, do the owners really want their projects to be CCO, Web3, decentralized, community owned and driven? Or do they want, the benevolent leader kind of at least guiding the show, if not, running it like a real project? And I think most, even if they're not outwardly saying this, they want the latter. They want someone running the show. They want someone maybe giving them surprise airdrops every 3 or 4 months. And I think a great proof of that is for like products like Toads. When does Toads run? Whenever there's hints of it being given utility in other projects, like in the Yuga Labs ecosystem. That was the last time that we saw the Toads price really make a movement. And to me, that's just an indicator of what the market still wants and values. So, through an extended bear, I think that's where some people will point to these CCO or just meme projects, maybe holding up better than utility. I don't know. I think there's also a real scenario where some of these memes just die. Like, is this meme really going to be relevant here without Satoshi
Right.
actively managing the brand, the meme in 6 to 12 months? I'm not so sure. I'm not a buyer here.
Yeah, because my sort of thought with that is it's the type of thing where you could argue this was one of the communities that were already sort of running the project, and the reason why it was still alive was because of the community. It wasn't like they were building anything. There wasn't much that was sort of being promised already. So what's different now? That's sort of the bull case for it. But the bear case for it is obviously like just some stick figures that all kind of look the same, and how many of these 10K projects can really be run by a community. I think 10K is too much. I think something like the nouns is a little better off because it's a much smaller group of people that are holding it and a different group of people that are holding it. So that's sort of my thoughts on the MFers. Like, I personally not holding MFers. Don't I'm not on the side of bullish on it long term, really. I don't fully believe in that, but I also wasn't part of the community before, so might not have the best take on that because of that case. So to me, I think a lot of this stuff is, oh yeah, here's the little nouns. A lot of this stuff to me is like, if you weren't part of the a community before, why are you going to enter it now?
Yeah.
Um, that's sort of my thought. Unless you start seeing positive stuff happening within it, or they're running different events and stuff like that.
That could be the catalyst. Like, if you like the new leadership from like the community, and the new kind of self-appointed or appointed leaders, that would be maybe one reason to
Hmm.
buy in. But I think that's a really good point. And like, if you're not in the MFers meme already, like what is going to make you jump into it now?
Yeah.
I can't really see a whole lot. But part of the show title and theme is, how to trade through this bear market. I think one thing is to pay attention to the sets that are doing well or holding up. And you mentioned nouns. Nouns are the best performing NFT project right now, and it's hard to compare them, to the rest of the market because of their supply. It's so low. It's just at like 300 or so. So kind of hard to compare it to a 10K set. But again, that limited supply is going to help them hold up. I just randomly checked in on the little nouns floor over the weekend, and it's holding steady at 0.45. So it got down to like 0.4, 0.45 last week. It's actually up around 0.5, mid 0.5s over the weekend. So it's down a bit. But the beauty of the little nouns product kind of copying the nouns is all of the ETH from the mints just goes to the treasury. So there is something sitting behind the buys, backing all these up. It's not, just going to a founder who's going to run off and leave the project. So that's interesting. And this is one that's absolutely on my radar. The supply is coming up. It's over 2,000 now. So I think, these are every 15-minute auctions for those who aren't familiar. So the supply is going to get up there. It's going to be like 30,000 in a year, but there's already chatter that the community might vote to slow down the mint cycle at some point. So that'll be interesting to watch as we look for some potential flights to value or projects to really focus on here during a bear.
I would be super bullish on these if I knew what the supply ends up being capped at. The biggest problem for me is just if the supply keeps going up, like what's the point of buying in now? Because I think this is one that it is a cheaper entry point into that nouns sort of community and just their ecosystem in general. And it's more of a true DAO than a lot of these other projects that are upcoming that you're buying into that are basically just these random PFP projects. So yeah, if you were to buy into that's the thing is it's like half an ETH for something that supply hypothetically could be unlimited. I think it broke out to something like 30,000 in a year or by the end of the year or something, if it just went the way that it currently is. But regular nouns are way more expensive and are only going to go up another 150 the rest of this year or however much. So to me, like that's sort of the thing with these projects is the gap between the two within the ecosystem is wider than we normally see, but is somewhat meant to be, I guess, just by how they're running the minting process of it. So definitely something to keep your eye on in this sort of bear market. It does seem people are still interested in nouns, even though they are a little higher entry point than some of these others. We're still seeing nouns go for over 100 ETH. Pretty much each day. So there was the one yesterday or 2 days ago, there was an ape one that went for like 130 or something like that. So it's always nice to see stuff like that happening, like the high end prices still going through. So people are looking towards these and much smaller supply than something like punks, but it seems like nouns are sort of one of those when we talk about which ones are here to stay. Seems like nouns are on that list. So
they are. And just briefly, you mentioned punks. I mean, the punk floor is holding up pretty well, compared to the other products. We had to quickly touch on it. It's sitting at 47.9, 48 roughly, just a few under 50 ETH. And then when you really start to look at the floor, because I spent some time going through it, if you're looking for an aesthetic punk that you want to buy to be your forever punk and not just a floor for the trade, the floor is actually much thinner than it might appear. Like to get a good punk that you want to make your PFP, you're probably looking at mid 50s to low 60 ETH right now. So these are absolutely holding up well. There was definitely a point in time, and I was bad about this as well. Like I focused on utility projects because that's where all the liquidity was, and that's where the returns were. That narrative has changed, and now clearly punks are one of the better buys. And I mean, the floor is $56,000 in USD terms right now, and of course, we're still, we talked about how we're mostly pricing in ETH. But for those who are looking to move from the sidelines, there's going to get to be a point here soon where this number starts to look pretty attractive, and it'll be interesting. And like if we see a reversal and what that reversal looks like, then maybe we can start to apply that to other projects too, where we think we may have actually found the bottom.
Mm-hmm. And people want numbers. People like when people tout numbers like, oh, it's a buy at $20,000, or oh, this is a buy at, insert whatever number it's for ETH. Let's say, oh, is it a buy at 1,200? Is it a buy at 800? And people want to be given answers, but I think it's hard to necessarily do that. But I do think basically what we're just saying, nouns and punks too that are holding up, like that just shows like the difference in investors in those specific NFTs. And I think they're more long-term holders in that sort of mindset, that punks, nouns are the ones that are going to win out 3 years from now, not necessarily 3 months from now. And Cam is saying in the chat, he's asking about favorite projects to survive currently under 0.3. I don't think a lot of projects that are at that price point have the type of person who's trying to hold that for 3 years. I think that's the big difference in a lot of these. Also, like much lower downside risk to buy something at 0.2 Ethereum. That's, a few $100 versus $50,000 worth of something. So I think some people might hold just because it's like, well, would you sell something for only $500 when you bought it for $700? I think it's just like a different mindset at those levels. I don't know if you have a take on that, but
Yeah,
that's
it's a
sort of what I
good
was thinking.
question. I think it's a common question. So favorite projects to survive under 0.3. So again, full disclosure, I'm a bag holder, but the Degens and Rect Guy are kind of right in that range after they've kind of fallen a bit over the last week. I think Degens are at 0.5. Rect Guy I saw like 0.4. So it's close. The founders, OSF and Mando, they are going to show up every day.
Mm-hmm.
Or if at least that's what I think. That's the reason why I'm still holding. They've been publicly stating that. So I think that's the theme to identify is the teams that you think are going to continue to show up every day, as well as those who have the funding to do so. So we know those two. They've pretty much alluded to that. They've sold a lot of their ApeCoin. They're well off. They're not doing this for financial reasons. They're doing it for something else, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big indicator of their willingness to stay. Cam mentions gutter clones. I mean, that was actually on my mind. So you want to look at maybe the companions from the top end sets that have been able to stay somewhat relevant. I was actually thinking about Cool Pets.
Mm-hmm.
The Cool Cats themselves are in the credit card zone now. We were chatting about this. Credit card zone is under the $5,000 limit where you could conceivably purchase the NFT with your credit card. Cool Pets are like 0.25 or something right now, right? So they're like $300. So that's absolutely in the credit card zone. That's in line with where everyone was buying Top Shots like crazy a year ago. So if you think that the Cool Cats has a brand that could potentially turn around, make it, that they're pivoting a bit from the game, so to speak. So that would be an interesting one. I'm not lining up to buy, but it's one that I'd pay attention to in that zone as well.
Yeah, I'm still of the mindset of I would rather get the OG thing, probably if it drops that much, versus like Azuki is at 8 and Beans are at 1. Like that's a much bigger gap. I think the Cool Cats to Pets gap has closed enough that I would probably go with a cat at that point. I do think a couple I've always sort of thought in that range is the Penelope's Country Club. It's basically just been a stable coin at 0.3 ETH, and Carlini's building through that, and he's always harps on that he built through the last down market, like he was there from 2018 to 2020, while not many others were. So I think he also has the experience coming off that. And then I think Cryptoon Goons is one that I kind of like in that range. They're a lot more about the art. They're doing a lot of stuff at NFT NYC. Those are ones that I hold. Ones that I don't hold. Smiles is one that I could see holding up through. I kind of go back and forth on that one, but they're around the point 0.4 range as well. They just did some partnership with Steph Curry. So it's really the ones that have real world partnerships and, like you said, like a team around it that you can expect is going to be here long term and actually is crypto native and trying to do stuff like on Ethereum just in general. So to me, I'm not really buying a lot of stuff in general right now
Mm-hmm.
because I don't see too much short-term upside. I want the market to sort of reset first. Like once we start seeing stuff, it doesn't even have to be like going back up per se, but just the general market, real world, are we in a recession? Are we not? Kind of stuff to get somewhat filtered out. People, as Ticos is calling them, filter out these moon boys who are out on the Twitter streets who were just benefit from up only life, and they're probably we'll see a lot of these influencers no longer be online and on Twitter, and they'll sort of disappear like Sartoshi did. So um, that's sort of the stuff for me. Let's talk about a little of upcoming projects
Mm-hmm.
this week, because sure what I had in the title here was, can upcoming NFT projects win? Are there ways? Are there outs for them? Because one thing I think a lot of people talked about is in the next cycle, do you think new projects are going to be the ones people put money towards versus these old ones? So that's the side of it that I think could work out. But what's your thoughts on these upcoming projects? Because a lot of them have been already pushing out the mints, and now they're coming out this week, which is probably a terrible time to come out as well. But what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, and that's why I pulled up this tweet. So the Wonder Secret Club was likely the biggest mint of today. 187,000 followers on Twitter. Pretty big followership numbers there. And then just a couple hours ago said they're suspending their mint due to market conditions, and that they're currently planning and building next steps. This is just the beginning. So certainly can respect that decision. I mean, this morning was maybe the single most precarious morning to try to
Yeah.
launch an NFT into. So I totally respect that decision. This is not the last time we're going to see this decision. So certainly won't be surprised if a lot of new teams, founders kind of choose to delay or try to time, a more bullish entry point. But kind of back to your initial question, can new mints win? I think absolutely they can. And I think a couple of things are going to happen. First, the market's going to be smarter and tighter. So we're not going to just see, every 0.08 mint, sell out. And then immediately see secondary action. Like those days are done. It's going to take a strong product to probably even mint out here for the near future. And then like the days of like the Moonbirds or Azuki immediate first week secondary action, like those are probably done for a little bit, right? Like we're not going to see the race to 5 to 10 ETH for just in the matter of a few days, but. Who knows? I mean, I'm saying that. I just said it out loud. I mean, Goblins literally just did that 2 weeks ago. So, I guess if the liquidity in the market does get concentrated into a set, certainly that is possible. And if you see that, then that certainly will be something to watch if it's able to move that quickly. But I think we're going to have some winners in this market, but it's going to require kind of paying attention, being tight, not chasing everything, because one of the easiest ways to lose a bankroll is just to kind of is death by 1,000 cuts and just chasing everything, mostly losers, and then you miss like the slam dunk that's going to come in 2 months. And we've been on this cycle where like once a quarter there's been a slam dunk play. Last quarter it was Moonbirds, before that it was Azuki, before that it was Doodles, before that it was Clone X, before that Bored Apes if you want to call it. But basically every 3 months we've had one. Granted, that was all kind of during a bull market, so it'll be curious if we're able to get another one this quarter in a more bearish market. But I think you gotta plan, be ready, and again, there's been a theme is survive, but we keep keep some funds, right? Don't go bust and don't just walk away.
Yeah, don't be afraid to just sit on the sidelines and watch. And like some of my best learning experiences are from watching and not taking action. Like with goblins, even like just watching and seeing why did they go up, why did they have such a success, and try to go after others that have similar. Like you could have watched what goblins did, and then like when other projects are copying, it has that diminishing returns idea to it. But then ones that are maybe doing something new, like the wag die, when they did the um, burning of the ape, and then they were rewarding people who burned the NFTs. Like that was a different version. They weren't just doing what goblins were doing. So um, sometimes it's good to just like watch and see, and then look back. Like people say hindsight is 2020, but I think if you can go and look as to why certain projects succeeded, that'll help you the next time a new project pops up. In that sense, so yeah, like you said, like there will probably be winners in each of these sections of the bear market because people still want to participate. People don't. There's a lot of people that aren't ready to like quit and leave and want to try to find the next version of this goblin town that does have that high upside. So
Absolutely.
that's the sort of medium board idea, um, to sit around and like watch. And you don't have to be minting stuff every day. You don't have to be trying to flip stuff every day. It's more like watching and seeing what's going on. And I think with next week being NFT NYC, there will probably be some innovations on the tech side that pop up during that conference. There will probably be different ideas that projects are trying to do that we haven't seen before. And so maybe it's just to sit and wait and see what happens there. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, no, it's going to be a good. I think it's going to be a good week, maybe a couple weeks to stay bored. We've
Mhm.
taken a look at the drops this week. I think there's a couple chances out there, but in general, I don't love the board. Maybe we just jump right into it. So
Yeah.
I'd say maybe the highest likelihood for a winner this week could be this Sneakerheads project. So it's from the artist goes by Il Lawi Ali Dawood is his name. 60,000 followers, pretty well known. So I'm not personally that close to like sneaker Twitter, but I know like a decent number of the newer NFT traders have kind of come over from that space. It seems like it's one that's got that cult following. They've got 319,000 followers on their Twitter here, ahead of what's going to be a 100% allow list mint at 0.25 ETH for these 5,000 hand drawn sneakers. So the sneakerheads themselves, I'm going to pull up their website.
And this is for Saturday, correct? For the mint.
I have to. It's Friday. Mint is June 18th. Yeah. So is that Saturday? All right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we've got a little bit of time. So this is the end of the week. So certainly, who knows what the macro conditions will be in 5 days. I think the art is interesting on this one. So essentially, it's heads, like human heads, but styled from sneaker parts. So it's literally sneaker heads. There's 5,000 of them. So I like that. It's half the supply of kind of the standard PFP. In a lot of ways, I'm getting the Invisible Friends vibe from this drop. It's a similar price point. It's all allow list. It's got a cult following community, granted, like very different communities. And it's the same supply. Now, I'm not calling for the same price action as Invisible Friends, but that's just an initial vibe that I got. They've got 40 base models that they're all going to be based on. And then the rest of it, I'd say it's a little bit more general, the roadmap that they want to be a Web3 sneaker brand. They want to be the best sneaker brand out there, in the metaverse. They've got some utility planned. Oh, here's an interesting feature. So they've got their own version of nesting and it's called Stock 'em, where essentially you keep your sneakerheads stocked,
In the
and that is
box.
how you will be able to unlock the best rewards over time. And if they're able to successfully pull that off, we've seen how what nesting has done to the Moonbirds, right? And how there's only 100 listed. That certainly impacted that early price action. So I
Mhm.
think one thing to watch is if they announce like a stock 'em date, pay attention to that trading window up until that date, maybe a day or two past, because that's when the Moonbirds trading action was peak froth.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be an important one to watch. But I liked that concept of this, especially from a trading perspective. And they've got big goals, big visions. I'm not deep enough in the sneaker community to know if this brand, if this artist is like the best one, but it seems promising.
Yeah, this is interesting. I do like the art. I think it's very different than other stuff that we've seen. A lot of them, I don't know. It's the same base model. Not sure if that necessarily is a bad thing, but um, it's definitely different. And if they are bringing their own community, like you said, with invisible friends, that could be benefit. The issue is it's 0.25 mint, which obviously, what's that like? Oh man, so like $300 now. So it doesn't sound as bad when you're thinking of it in USD terms, I guess. But yeah, I think if there's a lot of people that have come over from sneaker community in general, their biggest issue right now is just the timing. So um, in what's that 5 days from now, market trends could be very different also. So that's the other side of it. But yeah, I think as you said, this is probably the one to watch for this week. Um, at least it's the one that I'll be watching. I'm actually gonna be at a wedding on Saturday, so I probably just won't mint. Oh, actually, it's whitelist only, so I wouldn't be able to mint
Right.
anyway. So I probably won't end up watching it. But if it dips down after, I could be interested in hopping in, depending on prices at that point, as well. So yeah, this is definitely one interested in. The other side of these, well, not the sneakerheads specifically, but just new mints is we're going to see a lot more, and this can transition into the next one for Lacoste. Like we're going to see a lot more of these brands running projects, and that's where I become a little more bearish on the projects that aren't tied to brands. Something like Gutter Cats that you mentioned is they've been doing a lot of stuff with Puma. Puma's kind of attached themselves to Gutter Cats. Nike has attached themselves to artifact stuff. I think for the ones that long term are going to succeed, that I'm looking for, are going to have some connection to brands that people already know, because if you already have Lacoste branded clothing, or um, something like that, like you already know them as a brand, you're more likely to buy their next thing because it's an NFT that gets you something that you are already planning on paying for in general. So, what's your thoughts on this Lacoste one?
It's an interesting concept, and I kind of wish I'd had a tally of how some of the prior brand entrances into NFTs have gone. I think certainly some brands have taken it more seriously and have had better approaches than others have. And it seems like some, especially like in the clothing industry, have kind of slapped one together. Like Zara had one a while back. I never really heard about
Yeah,
anything from it again. Versus like how
Gucci's been doing a bunch.
but like Adidas came in with a real plan, and of course, Nike's been working on their digital shoes since 2019. Um, this one's interesting. So first, I gotta call out their pin tweet. It says probably, definitely nothing, with probably crashed with crossed out. We saw a different tweet from NFT statistics this morning that 90% of the products that said probably nothing are worth probably nothing right
We're
now.
actually
So,
nothing.
so are actually nothing. So that's not the best foreshadowing here for Lacoste. But so I spent some time on their website here this morning for UNDW3, which is the kind of the tag or the title for this project. I don't know much about it, what this mint actually is. Like I don't know what we'd be minting. Like, are we minting the Lacoste? Is it an alligator or a crocodile? Um, like, are we just minting different versions of that? Like, I guess I don't know exactly. So they say it's 11,212 collectibles. It's going to be 0.08 price. So kind of right there, the supply is high. That's 0.08 is a relatively high price point for this market right now. And I mean, they've got kind of a general statement on their site that, you know, it's going to be on a journey to experience collaborative fashion in a new creative way. Members will have exclusive access to products and content created by the community for the community. So like, that's a little bit of a red flag. Like if I'm buying into a Lacoste brand, like I probably want access to Lacoste products and content, not
Right.
necessarily the NFT projects community that they're able to create. So there's that, and like the roadmap is very vague. So they say round 1, the journey begins, the arrival of the crocodile, and then round 2 is blurred out. So I don't know. I mean, this website could have been built in about 30 minutes. So it's not showing like a huge amount of preparation. So I'd say I'm a little bearish on this specific mint. But it's definitely one of the more marquee of the week. And will be a good test if a major brand is going to be able to launch and have success in this market.
Yeah, and it's sort of funny because it's like the fact that they are a known brand already and don't really have much info out there, people are bearish. If this was just a random crocodile, poorly drawn crocodile project that had no information, people would be all about it. It's like weird how that kind of works. But yeah, I agree. It's like in this current market to not have much information on what to expect from a pretty well-known brand in Lacoste. It's somewhat concerning. I think the idea of no roadmap is somewhat in right now, but at the same time, like this is telling you like completely nothing. If you're someone that wants to be connected, like at least just put somewhere in there like, oh, discounts on Lacoste apparel or something. Um, you put it could be pretty vague still and could change later, but I just it's not really jumping out to me either. I think if I got on, because I signed up for the pre-mint for this one, I think, but looking at it right here right now, I between the two, like I still think I would side with the Sneakerheads one, at least between these. And a lot of the other ones have just been pushing back. So I'm not sure if this one has always been planned for right now, but yeah, I mean the one thing going for them is they do have a known brand, known fashion brand. So I think you can expect some sort of apparel as part of owning the NFT, but kind of sad that they didn't give more information.
Which I guess, I mean, let's put this back in US dollar terms. I guess we keep coming back to it. 0.08 is like $100. That's the cost of a shirt. So,
Right. Yeah.
I guess when you think about it that way, maybe it's not that much, especially if you think you're going to have a shot at some of the best merch. And 11,000 supply for a brand this large really isn't that much. So anchored back to where ETH is now, it actually changes the conversation. It actually does for sneakerheads as well. So sneakerheads is 300. That's in line with sneaker purchases. So if you think you're going to get a shot at some IRL physicals, down the line, that entry point becomes a lot more attractive at $300 as well. So who knows? Maybe this ETH dip will allow those who have been on the sidelines a little bit but interested in NFTs to be able to make the move a little more reasonably.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also like gas fees are extremely low right now. So that's the benefit, I guess, if you want to call it. Minting stuff right now is it's like way cheaper than a lot of people are used to. Like you're not spending $1,000 on these items just to mint them and then they go down, like a lot lower of the downside risk when it's only coming out to around $100 and might be a little more attractive to new people who haven't entered into NFTs because it was too expensive for them. So that's the side of it that I think could be positive. And then we have this Anero drop, which we both looked at, and some of these, I like it, but a couple of the pieces that they've put up as um, it could be this. It have looked just exactly like Azuki. This one's a little different, but when they have these ones that are like cutting off the heads of them at the top, like it could end up being whatever. But a few of them looked exactly like Azuki's that they
Yeah, I
had
don't
as
know.
previews. So
I don't know if I have any of those. Oh,
like
here's
that, yeah,
one.
that one. So
So
that
this
one
is
to
a
me
tough
looks like
one.
that's exactly what Azuki looks like. So the other ones is like, oh, that could be cool. It's like an anime project, but then they show this one, which is like clearly off of an Azuki. So
Yeah, so I had to write about this for my weekly preview. I saw Anime Project 190,000 followers. At least have to pay attention to it.
mm-hmm,
I was going through their website and kind of so I started with I just went tab by tab. So downtown, this is kind of their overall, what's their goal, what's the vision. It says to create a truly decentralized brand for the community. Okay, we've seen that one before. And then they've got their blueprint, which is essentially a vision. They're talking about innovation. Together, we want to build something magical. Again, not really saying a whole lot, a little fluffy. They've got a transit map, which is their version of a roadmap, again, with like the Anero verse, physical,
mm-hmm,
metaverse, airdrops. So fairly standard there. But I think what threw me off a little bit was the crew. I started going through the bios, and Adnan is the CEO and founder. First bio, first or second sentence here. There's a spelling error in Web3. It's spelled Weeb3. And
hmm.
then if you keep going
That might
on,
not be a spelling error,
okay.
potentially, because weebs are a thing
Oh,
um,
interesting. Okay, well,
in
I take
anime
that back.
culture.
Maybe that was just my lack of anime knowledge. But didn't like the last sentence is just here to build dope shit, which is literally the Azuki
Yeah.
tagline, and it's like infamously Azuki, right? So like now they've copied the tag, they've got the same art. It's like, come on, like this feels like an Azuki derivative at this point. So
Mm-hmm.
that I'm probably out due to that, and again the mint price. So they're using a pretty heavy whitelist. I want to say, yeah, it's about over a third. It's going to be 0.09, and the public sales 0.14. That feels a little high
Mm-hmm.
for this market. So this one's going to be a little tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, like 0.14 costs a lot less than it might have a month ago. But it's still mentally, I think a lot of people are just set on this idea of over 0.1 mint just feels a little more cash grabby.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to say that this one is or not, but I do think people haven't necessarily switched off and onto the idea that, oh, that's X amount in USD. It's not as bad of a mint. I think people will still see it and, oh, it's more than 0.1 ETH. So we'll still probably be somewhat against it. So we'll see if the public has enough of an interest to it. I'm still on the side of like 10K is a lot right now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So the Sneakerheads one was 5K, but I think we'll see how this one goes. The other one is this Bubbleworld one coming up on Thursday. This is another one that I've seen that seems like there's some ambiguity with, but what's your thoughts on this Bubbleworld one?
So I think in general, I'm going to put Bubbleworld aside. I think
Okay.
through a bear market, this new class of like access pass or mint pass NFTs is an interesting one to watch and follow, especially at the right price point, because it allows you to mint and essentially get returns in an ongoing fashion for the near future. So we talked about Quantum Key for Justin Eversano's Doppelganger drop. Last week we had the Go to Pass, which
Yeah.
certainly it got hit. It came out of the gate at like 7 to 8 ETH range. It's down to like 4.5 ETH. But the advantage of the Go to Pass, for one, is on an ongoing basis, you're going to be able to mint those artists' work, and
Mm-hmm.
then if the market values those, then you'll be able to get a return ongoing fashion. And ideally, over time, the past pays for itself. And certainly, like the quantum key from Justin has well paid for itself for those who have held. Uh, this one is a little bit closer to pre-mint, and I'm sure there's plenty of folks out there who their pre-mint pass has given them enough value to justify the cost of that pass. So
especially if they
that's
got Goda.
oh,
That one was through pre-mint.
Exactly. I mean, Goda was a great turn
Yeah.
trade for anyone who sold that because it was a 1/8 mint. So I think the question now for Bubbleworld is, so we've already said, okay, this is a good concept. This concept can work. Now the question is, can the Bubbleworld team actually pull this off?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to bring a curated set of NFT collections from treasured creators, and we see some of the investors here. We don't really have a huge peek at who those creators are, so I think that's a bit of a question mark. You're going to get access to whitelists. That here's the team. It's mostly a nine. I didn't really know many of these folks here. We see a couple moonbirds, an ape, and a mutant here among the rest of the folks. Here's just the mechanics. The founders passed 10,000 editions for these. The way it's going to work is if you have the pass, you're going to get on the whitelist, but it's just a 30% reduction from public mint price. So it's not like you're going to be minting NFTs for free. You will have to pay just at a reduction. So kind of looking at it from this way, like it can almost come across as just a cash grab to get you to be able to pay for these upcoming curated mints, even with a discount. But then a few other things that you'll be able to get is you're going to be able to get a token allocation and token airdrop for their Bubble House token, whatever that is. And then they've got a few more tiers. They've got an exclusive tier, which is just 300 count, 60% reduction on price. And then one Supreme, which is going to get a free mint for everything. I thought that was kind of interesting to just have one of these. I think one thing that maybe threw me off a little bit going through their pitch deck is they appear to be partnering with a lot of like TikTok influencers.
Mm-hmm.
So we see like Brooke Monk, this Buddy Gator on Instagram. We see the Chizu, I'm not familiar. Then like Rachel Brockman, another TikTok influencer. So that's definitely not the standard kind of playbook that we've seen have success.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you get into like TikTok and Instagram, it does unlock a different audience. But it's a little less crypto, less NFT native. Those products kind of live in their own world, and I don't think they generally do too well. So that part did throw me off a little bit as I was going through the pitch deck here. So I kind of put in my weekly post. I'd probably sit this one out, and then see the access to the curated drops that they bring you. And if you feel like those are good, once we have a little bit more information on what those are, make the decision then if this is a pass worth buying.
Yeah, I think that is interesting. Like you said, that TikTok is kind of a whole different world than our normal Twitter influencer. But TikTok is massive when it comes to engagement. And I mean, you saw the people on there that were connected to TikTok had over 2 million of the followers on there. So has a big reach. Which I think is a big benefit, and it seems like they've at least thought out who they're connecting to. So we'll see. It's kind of funny to use DeMarcus Cousins there for the NBA one, but yeah, I think it's always tough for me when these companies are saying they're connected to sports leagues that already have NFT collections and connections. So.
Right.
That's one side with it there. I think the Sweet Green one could be interesting. And GoPuff, like those are pretty big brands that people already know and are connected to. So it'll be interesting to watch this one. Still not sure about it personally, but I can see it having people that want to get in and be a part, especially if they're expecting to have future collections, and just the partnerships they have there are pretty widely known. So decent one here as well to sort of close out the week of what's upcoming. Is there anything else that you are looking forward to this week?
That was mainly it. Just quickly on art blocks. There's a few
Mhm.
factory drops this week. There's actually one live during our show. I just wanted to check in on it. So it's about half minted. I actually thought that's pretty good.
Mm.
Steve McKelney, he's done a few other factory drops in the past. Um, so last Friday's factory was the first one not to mint out in quite some time. Only 90 of 487 got minted. And of the drops this week, we see 400 supply, 285. So that one's a little bit more interesting. And then we're back to 400. So I think we've seen the factory at around the 200 supply do really well.
Mhm.
And now we're back to the thing where 400 even seems too high. And we're not minting out. So I'd say for anyone who's playing art blocks, well, of course, if you like the art, that's one thing. Go ahead and mint it. But from a trading perspective, you're going to want to focus on the lower supply sets and ones that can catch that steam um, on the primary. Because if they don't have a shot to mint out on the primary, then of course there's not going to be any secondary action.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Um, so is that one of it? Are any of these Dutch auctions still, or are the factory all flat fees now?
I've seen a mix. So last Friday's actually was a painful Dutch auction, 1.5, 0.1. And then it almost raises the question: had it been just a 0.1, would it have done better? So now, now the price is going up. So we have a fixed 0.14 for Rota here from Sebastian Brochure, who I'm seeing crypto art in the tag.
Hmm.
So I wonder if he was tied to that product. I'm assuming that in some
One of
capacity
the
he
historical
is.
projects.
I own a few of those back from the historical meta.
Yeah.
Um, so this one is probably the most interesting, at least from a supply standpoint. Need to dive in a little bit more on Sebastian here and understand the story a little bit more. But I think that's just the general theme for our blocks, and I think it'll likely be also a fine week just to kind of watch, maybe sit on
Hmm.
the sidelines.
Yeah. That makes sense. I agree with you there. Like, kind of watch what's happening with these on the smaller mints. Are people still buying art in this market? Because I think if so, like that's some people are touting that it's going to go back to art, but I
Mm-hmm.
guess we'll see. It's not just PFP is long term in that sense either. So um, keep an eye out on these. As we mentioned before, like art blocks, they pump out a lot more of these individual projects and have a little more marketing behind them than a lot of the other random stuff that pops up on Twitter. So, um, yeah, I'll have to check that one out with the crypto art, what his connection is to it, because that one does have a decent following from
Mm-hmm.
like the not even just the historical people, but it's kind of has some sentimental value to it as well. So we'll see. But yeah, that's pretty much it for us this week on what's upcoming. Um, be safe out there. Don't go too crazy on things. Like might be a good time to look into uh, trading on short trading and just like watching markets and trying to see because it's pretty volatile in a lot of these coins right now. They'll go up and back down and then back up, and they're kind of all over the place, but could be a good time to learn sort of how a lot of the trading market goes on the coin side, since there's less of the trading market on the NFT side right now. So that's something that I'd say like keep your eye out for. Might be a good time to like learn things that you've wanted to on say how to read a contract. We have some stuff on the website as well on how to mint from contract, but you can also just sort of see what each of the tabs do and mean and look into a little of the code side. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do if you're being somewhat bored on the trading side. So um, that's it for me. Anything else you have?
No, I think we covered it. Just be careful out there. I think it's going to be a fine week to just stay bored.
Um,
But
Yep.
follow along for meaningful updates.
Yeah, and on Thursday we'll probably talk a little about upcoming stuff on NFT NYC. If we have any projects that we're looking for there that might be coming out with some info. I think a lot of projects have been somewhat holding back and are waiting to bring out stuff. We've been tracking some of the bigger name stuff that into sort of a schedule on luckytrader.com as well. If you're looking for, if you're going to be in NYC and are interested in some of the projects, you want to know when they're running their events, we have some stuff set up there on times and location and projects that are grouping up, partnering in these events as well. So check that out, and we'll see you guys next time.